What's going on, guys? Aaron from Top Tier Gaming here, coming at you with an updated hand trap tier list for post Mavens, and also we just had a YCS, I think it was YCS Dortmund, I always forget the name, but we got to see another round of Ishizu tier, proving itself to be the best deck, so it's time to make a hand trap tier list for the updated format in the Tier 0 format we are in. I wanted to bring this a little bit earlier, I said so in my Board Breaker side deck card tier list. However, I've been very addicted to a new mobile game I've been playing called Nike, Goddess of Victory. Yeah, I've been very addicted to that game, so a little bit late on this, but regardless of that, I'm going to be going through the hand traps, ranking them, sort of how they fit into the current format. We have some new ones on the list. I finally added Orange Light because it's extremely relevant right now, and I added the Bestials, so we will rank those as well. But before I get into this tier list, I do want to let you guys know, Discord link down below along with all of our other social media links. Also, if you do enjoy this type of Yu-Gi-Oh content and you like what you see here, feel free to thumbs up and subscribe. It really helps me out and what I do here on the channel. And without further ado, let's start ranking some hand traps. So starting off, we have meta at the top, which are things you definitely want to be playing in your main deck or your side deck. We have strong picks, okay options but not the best, situational, and not this format. And I think something interesting about hand traps right now is there's like a very set amount of decks that really can play hand traps. You're not finding a lot of these inside Tearlaments. These are more for like Sprite and decks that are actually playing hand traps right now instead of board breakers, because it is really like very deck specific right now, because we're in a format so powerful that board breakers are definitely being a little bit more popular. That being said, hand traps are still very relevant and a lot of these here are still very good. So we're going to start with Ash Blossom. I think Ash is always the one we start with because she is generic. I'll put her in okay but not the best, which is a pretty low rating for a card like Ash Blossom, but essentially her by herself right now does absolutely nothing. She needs to be paired with another hand trap almost always. However, the like other good decks this format are like Sprite, where Ash can hit starter, which is very nice. You can hit Fluandereeze pretty heavily with this card, so things that aren't tier, and everything that isn't tier is still hit decently by this card, so I think it's still okay. Reaper I actually think is pretty strong. It's not amazing, but hitting Kick Kalos is great. Their only out is to like crime it back, I'm pretty sure. If you can hit Kick Kalos, not only do you stop that monster from coming out, but you also stop Rule Kalos, which is very good. I do think Reaper has been seeing an upwards trend of play. I don't know if it will really continue that way, but as of now, I do think that Reaper has proven herself to be at least a decent side deck option right now, especially against tier. It's not something you'd really see in your main deck, which is why I'm going to put it in strong pick. That being said, I do think Reaper is pretty solid. Contact C, not this format. I don't think it's very good. There's a lot of very easy links that can be made right now. This card is good when decks sort of like lock themselves into their archetype, or something like Tri-Brigade where they have to use beasts as link material. So if you give them a Contact C, they can't do anything with it. Diddy Crow, interestingly enough, like when you go into the format, your first thought would be, yeah, Crow's insane. It's a tier format, and you'd want to put him here. And then you'd be like, maybe it's a strong pick, but I'm almost tempted to put it in okay. And the reason I want to put it here is because it was severely outclassed in Darkwing Blast. They just made Crow feel so weak to what it should be. And now I think the only decks that should really play Crow are things like Tri-Brigade, where it really fits into their engine. So this is going to be weird, but I'm going to put it in okay options, but not the best, meaning it's outclassed. There are just a lot better cards. That being said, some decks can't play the Bestials. Things like Exo Sister, they can play it, but there are decks like Live Twin, Exo Sister, and decks that lock themselves to controlling certain archetypes where you can't play that. And then Crow is really good, but for most decks, I feel like Crow has been severely outclassed by the Bestials. So I'm going to put Crow here, even though that seems weird. Crow is definitely a good hand trap if you're not going to play the Bestials, but I feel like you should just be playing those instead of Crow right now. And then you could technically play 12 remove from play hand traps, but is that really necessary? I'm not so sure. Cycle Reader is not good right now. There's no light decks in the format, and like the Bestials deal with what light decks are here. So Cycle Reader definitely, if I could put this lower than not this format, I would, but this card in formats where it's good is really good. Droll, I'm gonna put it in okay. Like, it's not bad, but I don't see many people on it, and it doesn't feel great. I feel like their hand has to be something very specific for this card to be good. Like, on average, it's not that great right now, but I do think it's okay. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's really strong versus Tearlaments in some situations, or like they can't tactics afterwards, and if they like start with Perlarino, then they can't add off kick Kalos and it's okay. They can't like pop their own Scream and search again. Like, there are situations where this card can be good, but on average I would say it's by definition just okay. There's not many decks besides Fluanderies specifically where this card's amazing, and then Fluanderies have D-Shifter, and a lot of decks have D-Shifter now, where this card got hit a little bit. Valor is sort of in the same vein. It's weak to D-Shifter again, and it's not impactful enough right now, so we'll put this in okay as well. Gamma, I'll put in strong pick. I think this card is solid. It can negate Tearlament Grave effects, which is good. It can negate, you know, a bunch of different things because it doesn't really care as long as your board's open. You can negate Orange Lights, Bestials, things like that. Most of the time it's going to be negating like really powerful effects on board though, or, you know, tier effects in graveyard. And that being said, this is really good versus other matchups as well. Like, it's okay versus Flunder, especially if they don't have the hand to play around it, where they can very quickly like chain block and then summon statue and keep playing past that. I think Gamma's a really solid pick, mostly in side decks, but we'll see how this sort of evolves. I've seen some people on it, but a lot of the games I've seen it be played, it is like really weird, especially because Tearlaments with Kelbeck and Agido can like mill your driver and then Bestial it away. So there are situations where I don't think Gamma's that great, but I do think it's a little more impactful than these because it can just hit a lot of things. As it goes second card especially, I think this is a little better right now. And it's not weak to Shifter, and it can negate Shifter, so that's a lot of really good things it has going for it. Dogwood, I'll put it in okay as well. I think it's about as solid as Valor, maybe a little better because it's not weak to D-Shifter. It sort of depends, right? Like, if your deck's not really weak to D-Shifter and they're siding it out, then this is a little better. But this also doesn't hurt Fluanderies, which is something I believe it's gotten second twice at the most recent YCSs at both Pasadena and did it get second at Pasadena? I could be wrong about that, but I think it did. Or was that Minneapolis? I'm forgetting which one, but it definitely got second at Dortmund, so Flunder is proving itself to be very strong, and this doesn't really do anything to it, so maybe less good than Valor, actually. Ogre, ooh, I don't think Ogre's very good this format. I mean, it's situational. Like, if you're weak, if you're really siding for Sprite, this card's okay. Maybe just not this format. I don't think this card is hitting enough to actually be worth it. And like the spells and traps that Tear is playing, if you destroy them with Ogre, it's just not that good for you anyways because they're getting advantage off of it. It's only really good versus Sprite, and it's okay versus Flunder, and it's okay versus Exo-Sister. It's just okay across the board except against Tear, where I think it's really, really bad. So Ogre, I'm going to go ahead and say not this format. Imperm, I'm going to say, is a strong pick. I think if you're a deck playing hand traps, Imperm has proven itself to always be just slightly better than Effect Valor in most situations and most decks. Yeah, I think Imperm could be in this tier, but I also like that Imperm's like a pseudo board breaker. It's a really weak board breaker right now, especially I feel like ever since Elf's release, Imperm has felt a little bit more weird as well. Maybe Imperm is down here and it's just like an average hand trap. I could definitely see that. So maybe I should put it here. It's just not something a lot of people are playing. These two have been cut drastically in like all decks across the board, unless you're playing like all three of these together with Nibiru, and then it's a little different because Nib is a really weird hand trap where if you draw it by itself, it's pretty weak, but if you draw it with any one of these, it's full combo for any deck that's going first, right? It's really like the power gap between drawing Imperm with Nibiru and then just drawing Nibiru is ridiculous. So yeah, I'll put these here, but then it's going to be really weird to rank Nibiru as we go forward. Lancia, interesting. I'll put it in situational. Like, it's a really decent pick into Fluanderies. But that, and like, it's a really big deck right now, in my opinion, is like Flunder, because it is like the premier option for countering Tear, in my opinion. So if you need a Flunder side, this card's not bad, although I would say things like Droll outside of D-Shifter is better. I would say Ash and Imperm are just more solid against everything. Lancia is a very hard like Flunder counter, so we'll put it in situational. Nibiru is so tough because when this card is out of the format like it currently is, you could very easily say it's out of the format, it can't be good. But anytime Nibiru is out of the format, it is one of the best hand traps, and no one's playing it right now, one because of Rule Kalos and it's so easy to negate Nibiru, and then 2 because of Gigantic Sprite. It's not good versus Flunder because of Statue. But because of that, if you're able to play a large hand trap package and play Nibiru with like 9 Veilers, you can very easily steal a game going second. Is that good right now? I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna put Nibiru in Situational right now because I feel like if you want to catch people off guard with this card, right now is one of the best times to do it because no one's expecting it. It's just not that great right now. But it can be pretty impactful. But you also need to run these alongside it. So if you're running these in your very heavy hand trap deck, then I think situationally adding Nibiru is okay. And it's really good versus like Exosister and decks that aren't tiers. So yeah, I'll put Nibiru in Situational. Phantasme, not this format. It just hasn't been good in a long time, has it? It's not really impactful enough. Like, when you really need to draw specific hand traps like Nibiru in a format or see multiple different hand traps, he's okay. Against decks with a lot of targeting, he's fine as well, but just hasn't really been relevant in a while. Retaliating, no. If Tearlaments started playing Grief more, I think this card would be okay because it would just be a Macrocosmos. But Grief hasn't been popular in a, like, it's only been popular one time at one event. I think it was in LeBlanc's deck. D-Shifter, finally, I will put a hand trap in meta. We've been really avoiding this tier, it feels like, but D-Shifter is the card that's there. If your deck can play D-Shifter this format, you're playing D-Shifter. That's just how it is. Now, there are some situations where I would say that's not exactly true. Like, I've been having a lot of success with a very specific Madolche variant that isn't playing D-Shifter, even though that's classically a deck that loves to play the card. But I think right now, just being a deck that can play Shifter instantly puts you in like the rogue tier of the current meta. Like bare minimum, you're rogue because your deck can play D-Shifter, and it's one of the hardest counter to Tearlaments, whose only outs are Gamma, Orange Light, and Called by the Grave, which I have seen most lists even being off of randomly. So yeah, I will go, well, I guess not randomly, like Called by was hurt very much so by Mudora and Keldo being able to shuffle stuff back, but yeah, I'm putting D-Shifter in meta. I don't think there's much explaining needing to be done there. This card is insane. Token Collector, not this format. We all know this is for Sword Soul and decks that like make a lot of tokens. Then it's like one of the most blowout hand traps ever. Bell is, I'm gonna put it with okay. I just feel like the very standard low impact hand traps we're very used to for like the past 2 years being really solid, and you want to draw 2 low impacts to maybe stop your opponent's turn. That has sort of like not been great in this tier 0 very powerful format, where like classically I think you would want to play more hand traps in a format like this, and you'd run all of these because you need to stop like whatever FTK board or tier 0 deck is putting out. But because Tearlaments can play enough on their turn, and then even if you stop them with low impacts, they play on your turn, and it's like you're almost hand looping yourself because you have to use hand traps that aren't really getting you anywhere. I feel like in this format in particular, hand traps, especially these low impacts, aren't as great. Now, why is Gamma here instead of Bell when both of them can stop the Tearlament Grave effects? I would say that's mostly because Gamma hits more, even though it's more restrictive, and also because of D-Shifter. If your deck's weak to D-Shifter, you almost have to play Gamma. Gamma can just stop really annoying cards in this way, so I'm willing to put Gamma above Bell and put Bell here, even though Bell and Crow, you would think, are like really good this format. Once we get to the Bestials, you will see that it's like, I think there's actually better cards this format. Dogwood normally would go in the situational tier. I'm gonna put this in, ooh, yikes. This is a really hot take, isn't it? No one would think I would put Dogwood here, but one thing I have personally noticed with this format, and I think I do want to put Dogwood in strong pick because I love the card in this format, and I play it in almost every deck unless it has a different time win condition. These games go forever. I have seen so many Tearlament mirrors especially go to time, and you need a card like Dogwood if you're not playing your own in-engine out that is very easily accessed, like a Ladybug that you can send with Curious was a big one in the past. Gigantic Sprite summoning Red Resonator. Decks with those don't need Dogwood. Every other deck, I believe, needs Dogwood. Like, I think there should be 3 Dogwood in your side deck, and every deck that doesn't have its own way to win in time. It's become very abundantly clear that time is an issue and we need to be siding for it, Dogwood is the best hand trap in the game for that. And I have seen a lot of success with Dogwood personally. It's a very solid card for gaining a load of life points in a lot of situations where your opponent is just not able to kill you afterwards because of it. Yeah, Dogwood I'm going to say is a strong pick right now, and that is very weird. I don't think we'll ever see a tier list like this again, but this card to me is very, very impactful. Skullmeister, which you would normally think is lower than Crow and Bell. You see that all the time in almost every tier list I put out. Skullmeister is below Crow and Bell. However, interestingly enough, I'm going to put Meister in strong pick, which it does have downsides, right? Like this is something, if your opponent mills it, they can dark it back out, which is interestingly, and then it's level 4. So if your opponent's playing Tearlaments, Meister can be weird because it is a level 4 dark that they can make Dweller with or things like that. But if that's not like a super big deal to you, Meister hits a lot more than Crow and Bell because this can hit Scream, this can hit Crime, this can hit Solyek, as well as hitting every tier name. And I've seen this card as a second hand trap be like the best second hand trap in the game. Like a Bestial plus Meister is seeming to be very, very strong together rather than anything else. And I've seen Meister pick up a lot of steam. It's been a little bit under the radar as well. I think these are classically better, but I'm willing to say Meister maybe should be here, possibly, but I think it would be above these either way. Maybe I'll put it here. I think these are all about average, but Meister is a little better. Tough to say. Bestials, I'm putting straight in meta. I think that is not a surprise to anyone. Right now in this format, these are just better DD Crows. They're DD Crows on massive legs that give you benefits, and they're beyond insane. I think these cards are so disgusting for the game going forward. I wish they were never printed, but they're here. And now they're really, really good, and they hit more decks than just, you know, Tearlaments. They hit Sprite to some extent because you can hit a lot of elf targets, like especially blue if they target blue, right? And then it's really good versus Sky Striker, but mostly Tearlaments, let's be honest. This is a Tearlament destroying card. Your deck's probably playing this. You can dark out your opponent's Magnamoots to search your Bestials. This is representing all Bestials. I'm not putting them all on here. So like if you want to play, you know, 3 Magnamoot and 1 Druid Worm or 2 Druid Worm, they're solid. If you want to play 1 Saronir, if you want to play all 9, I've seen people have success with all sorts of different Bestial ratios. And yeah, I think it's just one of the best hand trap types right now. It's so solid, definitely meta. Orange Light is interesting because you know, it's a hand trap that hasn't been on the tier list that people often ask about, and I'm like, it's too niche, right? Like you have to be on a fairy deck, but right now in this format, that is very, very relevant. So if you're not playing a fairy deck, obviously this card is down here. If you're not playing fairies, you can't play this. Right now in the format, I would say Orange Light is meta. Like if you're playing Tearlaments or a fairy deck, you need to be playing this card. It stops Shifter, it stops Bestials, it protects your Tearlament plays. I think this is one of the best hand traps of the format right now. It's so good. I think we shouldn't stray away from Orange Light personally. It just negates too much, and like opening Keldo or Mudora plus Orange Light on your opponent's turn if you're playing a Shizu tier feels so good. And yeah, I think Orange Light's definitely up here. Honestly, the best hand trap of the format is arguably Hovness, but that is a very specific hand trap that I don't think is worth adding to the tier list. You're not playing Hovness in anything but tier, so it's more of an engine card to me than a hand trap still. But yeah, that's how I'm going to tier this. I think I agree with most of what I've done. Maybe I skirted some hot takes like putting this in strong pick, and then Nibiru's kind of weird, but I would say this is a solid hand trap. But let me know what you guys think down below, how you would rank this differently, what your favorite hand traps of the format are, anything like that. Did I place anything wrong? How would you make the tier list? And with all that being said, this has been Aaron from Top Tier Gaming. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you next time. Bye, guys.